Hi, Dr. Pulsifer here, and I'm going to talk about something that's especially important to teachers, but is important to everyone. And that is opinions, why some are worth more than others. A huge problem for college and university teachers today is the widespread notion that one opinion is as good as another. We see this even in the office of the president, where Donald Trump clearly thinks his opinion about medicine is as good as any medical expert's. In fact, he thinks it's better because it's his. And that, in a nutshell, is what many students bring to college. They think their opinion is as good as anyone else's. They fail to recognize the difference between opinion or common belief and certain knowledge, and they fail to recognize a difference between an opinion from someone who has no basis for that opinion, essentially, except their own belief, and someone who has a factual basis for their opinion. They haven't been taught this distinction because K-12 schools in the USA are about memorizing and regurgitating information. They're not about thinking or reasoning. And that attitude is getting into colleges and universities as well. So, why is one opinion more than hot air and another is not? Instructors need to persuade students that an opinion can rest on more than hot air. A physician's opinion about a medical question, such as the pandemic, holds far more weight than the opinion of a layman, politician, or not. An experienced professional coach's opinion in team games, coming from his or her experience about the game, holds far more weight than any mere fans. And it's always better when you can logically explain why something is true or not true. Either you're a person known to have exceptional experience and knowledge in the area, or you present a logical argument, not necessarily one based on quantitative scientific research, because that's only one way to know things and is often wrong. Otherwise, why is your opinion significant to anyone else? It's just noise. You're entitled to an opinion, quote unquote, insofar as it's a free country, but you're not entitled to have anyone pay attention to it. Many people rely on emotion and think that emotion counts for facts. The great boxer Muhammad Ali, who was quite a dim man, said, "I don't always know what I'm talking about, but I know I'm right." And that's nonsense. He was relying on emotion. Emotion does not lead to fact. Being offended doesn't lead to fact. It's just another emotion. In a vast number of cases, people take offense. The other person didn't intend to give offense. In fact, I knew someone who was offended by any disagreement with her. Any. That was her problem, not anyone else's. Disliking the facts does not render them untrue. Yet so many nowadays want to ignore what they don't like, and they are out of touch with reality. And always this comes down to what is reality. And some people are finding it harder and harder to figure that out. I once attended a talk about University of North Carolina's schema for the path to critical thinking. One of the undesirable stages on the way to critical thinking was everyone's opinion is as good as anyone else's. Another stage, we'll say in passing, was adopt some authority figure and accept whatever he/she says is true, which might sound familiar in the United States. If instructors cannot eradicate this foolish notion of equality of opinion, then all instruction becomes pointless. If all life is opinions without verified truth, why try to teach anything? So you can see why this is a very important thing to college and university instructors. Wishful thinking is far too common these days. The ignorance and ignoring of reality so common today tends to come from wishful thinking, wishing that whatever you like is true rather than whatever is true is true. After all, if one opinion is just as good as another, then isn't one fact as good as another? And a quote that I have that sort of illustrates this: lately folks in the States have become a bunch of entitled, whiny children who believe they can change history and behavior by simply ignoring it. It's a detachment from reality. Some people think everyone deserves respect for their opinions. Certainly not. Absolutely not. Everyone deserves the opportunity to earn respect. Sometimes people earn respect as soon as you know who they are because of what they've accomplished. More often it takes time. So as one teacher put it, you are not entitled to your opinion. You are only entitled to what you can argue for. And this brings us to science. Science is an organized, systematic way to try to arrive at truth. Of course, any individual practitioner can still be a wacko. And we've seen some of them come out lately in opinions about the pandemic. Established scientific fact, quote unquote, can sometimes prove to be wrong, although some things are not going to be proved to be wrong. For example, there is clearly no such thing as magic. Compared with any Tom, Dick, or Harry shooting off his or her mouth, science is golden. Yet more and more people ignore science because it can be inconvenient. And that is a disaster. People would rather parrot nonsense than find out the truth. How do we get flat earthers? The power line nonsense, which is merely, if you look hard enough in data for a justification, you'll find it. The anti-vaccination fools who don't remember polio and TB, let alone smallpox. And of course, the idiots who don't wear masks. They stop at stop signs and stoplights, but they won't wear masks. They're idiots. It's because people emote rather than think. This is a failure of education. And unfortunately, in the United States, we have false esteem in the lower grades, and we have this regurgitation and memorization instead of thinking. Educated is an attitude, not a measure of pieces of paper, such as degrees. It's about finding out whether something is true, not just taking one person's word for it, no matter who they are. Unfortunately, in K-12 and even college, we now teach people to take one source's word for it, in effect. Whoever's making up the end of grade test. Teaching people to think is hard. Teaching them to memorize and regurgitate is easy. And yet most of the teaching in K-12 and even college is about memorization and regurgitation, especially in distance education. So, to conclude, the connection between facts and reality is being lost in a welter of half-baked opinion, misinformation purveyors, and wishful thinking. And it's a disaster for the United States. Thanks for listening.